Eli Tanner rode through Christmas morning like a man outrunning ghosts. Frost clung to every fence rail. Snow blanketed the Wyoming landscape in pure white, broken only by the dark slash of the road beneath his horse's hooves. His breath crystallized in the bitter air. Each exhale a small cloud that vanished as quickly as his hope had. Years ago, he planned to reach the next town by nightfall, find a room, spend Christmas alone with a bottle in silence, the same way he'd spent the last 4 Christmases moving, always moving, because standing still meant remembering. Then he saw them. 2 small figures stood at a weathered fence gate, twin girls, maybe 7 years old, wearing matching coats that had been mended too many times. They didn't wave. They didn't call out. They simply stood there, hands gripping the fence rails, watching him approach like they'd been waiting for him their whole lives. Eli meant to ride past. His heels tensed to urge his horse forward, but the girls spoke in unison, their voices cutting through the frozen air like church bells. "Please, mister, be our daddy today." His horse stopped. Eli hadn't commanded it. The animal simply halted, as if it too recognized a moment that demanded stillness. "We asked God for a Christmas wish," one girl continued, her breath forming tiny clouds. "Then you came riding up." Eli stared at them. Their faces were identical, same button noses reddened by cold, same brown eyes enormous with hope, same absolute certainty that he was the answer to their prayer, behind them. Smoke rose from a modest cabin. Someone had stoked a fire this morning, made this homestead warm against winter's bite. But these girls had come outside anyway, positioned themselves at this gate, and waited. "Just for today," the other twin added softly. "That's all we're asking." Every survival instinct Eli possessed screamed at him, "Ride on! Don't engage! Don't let those hopeful eyes burrow into the hollow place where his heart used to beat." But his hands wouldn't lift the reins. His heels wouldn't kick. Those 4 eyes held him like rope around his chest, pulling tighter with each passing second. A man's feet might keep moving, but his heart knows when it's time to stop. His horse nickered softly, breath steaming. The girls waited, hope radiating from them like heat from a stove. Eli knew he should ride on. He'd known it for 4 years. Every time he'd been tempted to stop running, but this time, his body wouldn't obey. The cabin door burst open. A woman rushed out. Shawl clutched around her shoulders, her face stricken with mortification. She was young, maybe 30, with dark hair escaping its pins and eyes that held both strength and exhaustion. "Girls, get inside this instant." She reached them in seconds, hands grasping their shoulders. Her cheeks burned red, and not from cold. "I am so sorry, sir. They don't understand, but Mama," one twin protested. "You said we could ask God." "That's not what I meant. Rosie." The woman's voice cracked. She glanced at Eli, mortification deepening. "Please forgive them. Their father passed 2 winters back, and every Christmas morning they pray for—" She couldn't finish. The sentence hung in the frozen air like icicles. The other twin, Lily, Eli guessed, tugged her mother's skirt. "But he stopped. Mama." "He heard us and he stopped." The woman closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, dignity had replaced some of the shame. "I'm Clara Hollis. I apologize for my daughter's forwardness. They meant no harm." "No harm taken, ma'am." Eli's voice sounded rusty, even to himself. He didn't talk much these days. Clara straightened her spine. "Please, let me offer you breakfast. As an apology, you must be cold. And it's Christmas morning. I can't let you ride on without something warm in your belly." Eli should refuse. The word no formed on his tongue. "Please, Mr. Cowboy." Rosie's voice was small. "Just breakfast." Something the bravest thing isn't riding into danger. It's staying put when everything says run. "Just breakfast." Eli heard himself say, "Much obliged, ma'am." He dismounted, legs stiff from cold and riding, as he tied his horse to the fence post. He heard Rosie whisper to her sister, "See, Lily." He stayed. The words pierced him like winter wind through thin wool. He almost untied the horse right then, almost swung back up and rode hard toward the horizon. But Clara was already herding the girls inside, and the cabin door stood open, firelight and warmth spilling out into the cold morning. Eli took a breath that burned his lungs. Just breakfast, just warmth. Then he'd ride on. He stepped through the door. The cabin was small but clean. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across scrubbed wooden floors. The table was set for 3, but Clara quickly added a 4th plate. Everything showed careful mending: the curtains, the chair cushions, the quilts folded on the beds visible through an open doorway. Poor but proud. Clean but patched. "Sit, please." Clara gestured to the head of the table. "Girls, wash your hands." Eli removed his hat, fingers fumbling with the familiar motion. He sat where she indicated, and immediately felt the weight of the empty chair beside him. Ghosts filled that space: his wife's gentle presence, his son's eager chatter. He pushed the memories down hard. The twins returned, sliding into their seats with identical grace. They stared at him with unabashed curiosity. "Do you have children, Mr. Cowboy?" Rosie asked. "Rosie?" Clara's voice held warning. "It's all right, ma'am." Eli's throat tightened. "I did. Once. A boy and a wife. Fever took them both, 4 years back." The cabin fell silent except for the fire's crackle. Lily reached across the table and patted his weathered hand. "I'm sorry your family went to heaven," she said softly. "Ours went too. Papa makes good company for them. I bet." Eli's chest constricted so hard he couldn't breathe for a moment. Clara served breakfast eggs, biscuits, precious bacon saved for Christmas. Simple food that tasted like effort and care. She didn't pry into his loss, just offered quiet respect and a warm meal. The girls ate quickly, then disappeared to their corner. They returned carrying 2 small carved wooden horses. "Papa made these," Rosie said proudly. "Before he went to heaven. See the manes he carved every hair." Eli examined the horses with careful hands. The craftsmanship was good, better than good. Each horse had distinct personality, carved by hands that knew both tools and love. "Your papa was skilled," he said. Both girls beamed. "Mr. Cowboy," Lily's quiet voice. "Will you stay for Christmas dinner too? Mama's making venison stew. It's our special meal." Clara started to refuse on his behalf. "Girls, Mr. Tanner surely has places to be. Just dinner." The words left Eli's mouth before his mind caught up. "Just today, if your mama doesn't mind." Clara's eyes widened slightly, then softened. "We'd be honored." A wise man knows when he's been outfoxed, especially when the foxes are knee-high and wearing pigtails. Outside, snow began falling in earnest, fat flakes drifting past the window like white feathers. Eli watched them fall and realized what he'd agreed to: a whole day, with a family that wasn't his, in a home that could crack open every sealed wound inside him. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted his coffee cup. Just today. He could survive just today. Eli couldn't sit still. By mid-morning, restlessness drove him outside despite the falling snow. His hands needed work. His mind needed occupation. Idleness left too much room for thinking, and thinking led to remembering, and remembering led to pain. The homestead offered plenty of distractions. The woodpile was dangerously low for winter. The fence had gaps where posts had rotted. The barn door hung crooked, letting in drafts that would sicken any animal inside. Eli found an axe in the barn and started splitting wood. The rhythm soothed him: lift, swing, crack. Each split log was a thought silenced. He'd only been working 10 minutes when Rosie appeared. "What you doing, Mr. Eli?" She stood at a safe distance, watching with bright eyes. Building up your woodpile. Can I help? You can stack what I split. She set to work with enthusiasm, small arms struggling with logs half her size. Her sister Lily emerged from the cabin, watching from the porch. She didn't join, but her eyes tracked every movement Eli made. Clara appeared with a water bucket. You don't have to do this, she said. Can't sit idle. Eli swung the axe again. Besides, you need the wood. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. I'll help with the fence then. Been meaning to fix it before spring. They worked in companionable silence, Clara proving herself capable with tools. She wasn't performing gratitude or helplessness. She was simply working alongside him. Two adults fixing what needed fixing. Eli respected that. By afternoon, he'd restocked the woodpile, repaired 3 fence posts, and adjusted the barn door until it hung true. His muscles ached pleasantly. His mind had quieted. Mr. Eli. Mr. Eli. Rosie ran toward him, Lily following more slowly. We made you something. They thrust a paper at him. Eli looked down at a drawing done in charcoal. 3 stick figures stood in front of a cabin. Below them, in careful child's writing, me, Rosie, and Mr. Cowboy Daddy. His throat closed completely. Do you like it? Rosie bounced on her heels. Lily drew it. She's the good artist. I did the letters. Lily watched him with quiet intensity. You can keep it, if you want. Eli should give it back. Should explain that he wasn't their daddy. Wasn't anybody's daddy. Couldn't be what they needed. But his fingers curled around the paper's edges protectively. It's real fine, he managed. Best gift I've had in years. Both girls glowed like they'd swallowed sunshine. Clara called from the porch. Dinner will be ready soon. Girls, come wash up. As they ran toward the cabin, Rosie called over her shoulder. Daddy always said every tool has a purpose. You're our Christmas tool, Mr. Eli. Clara touched his arm gently as she passed. Thank you for everything. Eli stood in the falling snow, clutching a child's drawing, his chest aching with an emotion he'd thought he'd buried forever. Idle hands make a man think too much. Best keep them busy before the heart starts talking. But his heart was already talking, and he was terrified of what it might say. Christmas dinner was sacred. Clara had used their best, their only tablecloth. Candles flickered in holders made from tin cans, their light soft and golden. The venison stew steamed in a pot that had seen better days but had been scrubbed until it shone. The twins insisted Eli sit at the head of the table. That's where Daddy sit. Rosie explained matter-of-factly. He sat. The chair felt enormous. Clara served the stew with quiet dignity. Biscuits golden and fluffy. Dried apple pie cooling on the counter, their dessert. Simple food, humble offerings, but presented with such care that Eli's heart clenched. Mr. Eli, Lily's soft voice. Will you say grace Papa always said grace? 4 years since he'd spoken to God. 4 years of silence and anger and grief so deep it had no bottom. But those brown eyes waited, trusting. Eli bowed his head. The girls followed instantly. Clara's head lowered, her lips pressed tight. Lord, Eli began, his voice rough. Thank you for this food, for the hands that prepared it, for, he swallowed hard, for shelter from the storm, and for the grace of second chances. Amen. Amen, the girls chorused when Eli looked up. Clara's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She blinked them back quickly. Dinner passed with gentle conversation. The girls chattered about their horses, their favorite games, their papa's stories. Eli listened more than talked, but his silence felt comfortable rather than cold. After pie sweet and tart and perfect, the twins grew drowsy. They curled by the fire, wooden horses clutched in small hands. And within minutes their breathing deepened into sleep. Clara covered them with a quilt. Then she settled into the chair opposite Eli, firelight painting her features in warm bronze. "I should explain," she said quietly. "About their father." Eli waited. Thomas was a good man, strong, hard-working. Her voice steadied. "He died in a logging accident." The foreman rushed the work, ignored safety. Thomas warned him. He died for that warning. Her hands twisted in her lap. "I sought justice, compensation for my girls." The foreman had connections, town council, businessmen. They closed ranks. Her jaw tightened. "Called me a troublemaker. Said I should accept what happened and move on. Said Thomas knew the risks." Eli's fists clenched. "They've shunned us since. Won't buy my eggs. Won't let the girls play with their children. We manage. But..." She looked at her sleeping daughters. They deserve better than silence about their father's death. Truth has a way of coming out. Like smoke through cracks can't keep it sealed forever. Eli's moral compass, dormant for 4 years, stirred with old righteous anger. Injustice. A widow and orphans punished for seeking truth. "You did right," he said firmly. "Seeking justice ain't troublemaking." Clara's eyes met his, surprise and gratitude mingling. "Thank you for saying that." The fire crackled. Outside, snow fell steadily. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Clara whispered, "thank you for today. You've given them the best Christmas since their father died." Eli looked at the sleeping girls, their peaceful faces, their trusting surrender to dreams. He should leave at dawn. Before he made promises he couldn't keep. But his heart whispered otherwise, and this time, he couldn't silence it completely. Morning brought trouble wearing a smile. Eli woke in the barn where he'd insisted on sleeping. Proper boundaries, he'd told Clara. She'd accepted with understanding. The cold had seeped into his bones overnight, but the day dawned bright and clear. Snow glittered like scattered diamonds under a blue sky. He was feeding his horse when the twins burst into the barn. "Mr. Cowboy Daddy, come see the snow." Rosie grabbed his hand. "It's so sparkly." Before he could respond, another voice cut through the morning air. "Mrs. Hollis." Eli stepped outside. A rider approached through the snow, a man in his 50s, well-dressed, sitting his horse with the confidence of authority. His smile seemed painted on, not grown there. Clara emerged from the cabin, wiping her hands on her apron. Her face had gone carefully neutral. "Mr. Webb." "Good morning." Harlan Webb dismounted with practiced ease. "Just checking on you folks, making sure the widow and her girls survived the storm." His eyes swept over Eli. The repaired fence, the full woodpile. Calculations flickered behind his friendly expression. "We're fine. Thank you." Clara's voice held an edge. Webb's attention fixed on Eli. "And who might this be?" "A traveler. He took shelter from the snow." "I see." Webb's smile sharpened. "Shelter, of course." He stepped closer to Clara, dropping his voice to false concern. "Mrs. Hollis, I'd hate to see talk start again. You know how the town worries about the girls' welfare. Strange men staying overnight." Clara's face paled. "Mr. Tanner is a gentleman who—" "Of course, of course." Webb waved a dismissive hand. "I'm just concerned. Is all. Those girls need stability, propriety. I'd hate for anyone to question your fitness as their mother." The threat hung in the air like poison. Eli's fists clenched. He wanted to speak, to defend her honor. But opening his mouth would only confirm Webb's narrative, give him ammunition. His presence had become a weapon against her. Webb mounted his horse, tipping his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "Good day, Mrs. Hollis. Consider what I've said. The town has long memories." He rode off, satisfied smile lingering. Clara stood frozen, humiliation and fury warring on her face. "I should go," Eli said quietly. She turned to him. resignation replacing anger. Yes, you should. Before more people see, I can't afford more talk. Her voice was steady, but he heard the cracks beneath. Some snakes don't rattle before they strike. They smile and tip their hats. The twins watched from the porch, confusion clouding their faces. Eli's chest ached. He'd brought this on her. His staying, his helping, his simply being here all twisted into scandal by a man with poison for words. I'm sorry, he said. Clara's smile was sad. Don't be. You gave us a good Christmas. That's more than we've had in years. He nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Time to saddle his horse. Time to ride on. Time to return to the empty wandering that kept him safe from moments exactly like this. 50 yards down the road, Eli stopped. His horse halted without command, as if sharing his indecision. Behind him, the cabin grew smaller but not less vivid. Smoke still rose from the chimney. The fence he'd mended stood straight and true. The woodpile he'd stacked would last weeks. And on the porch, 2 small figures stood watching him leave. Even from this distance, he could see their tears. Rosie's voice carried across the snow, thin and breaking. You promised daddies don't leave. He hadn't promised. He'd said just today. But to them, staying meant staying. Eating at their table, fixing their fence, accepting their drawing. Those were promises in a language louder than words. Clara stepped onto the porch, gathering her daughters. She didn't call after him, didn't beg. She'd been abandoned enough times to expect nothing else. We'll manage. He heard her say to the girls, we always do. Her strength was devastating in its quiet dignity. Eli sat his horse in the middle of the road, snow falling fresh around him. His hands gripped the reins so tight his knuckles whitened. A man can ride 1,000 miles to escape his heart, but it rides right alongside him the whole way. 4 years he'd been riding. 4 years of nameless towns and faceless strangers. 4 years of running, but from what? Toward what he was running, from exactly this. From caring. From connections that could be severed. From hearts that could be broken, his own included. But those girls on that porch, crying for a man they'd known barely a day. That woman, strong enough to stand alone but deserving of someone standing beside her. They weren't asking him to replace what he'd lost. They were offering him something new. His wife's face swam before his eyes, her gentle smile, his son's laughter, bright and pure. They were gone. Fever had taken them, and no amount of riding would bring them back. But he wasn't gone. He'd survived. And maybe surviving meant more than just breathing. Maybe it meant living again. Even when living hurt. Eli looked back at the cabin. 2 small faces pressed against the window now. Watching. Hoping. Harlan Webb wanted to shame Clara. Let him try. Let the whole town try. Those girls deserved someone who wouldn't ride away when words got hard. That woman deserved someone who'd stand firm when storms came. He'd spent 4 years being nobody to no one. Maybe it was time to be somebody to someone. Eli turned his horse around. The animal moved eagerly, as if it too had been waiting for this decision. As he rode back toward the cabin, he saw Rosie's face transform from despair to disbelief to radiant joy. She grabbed Lily's arm. Pointing, Clara stepped off the porch, shading her eyes against the snow glare. Eli rode up to the gate he'd ridden away from. Thought you were leaving, Clara said carefully. Changed my mind. He dismounted. You said you were going to Christmas service. We usually don't. People talk. Let them talk. Eli's jaw set. Your girls deserve to worship with their community, and anyone who says otherwise can say it to my face. Clara's eyes widened. Mr. Tanner. Eli. Just Eli. He looked at the twins, now running toward him through the snow. Some things are worth standing for. Ma'am, Some people too. Rosie launched herself at his legs. Lily followed more cautiously, but her smile outshone the sun on snow. You came back, Lily whispered. I did. Rosie looked up at him, absolute trust shining in her eyes. Daddy's come back. Eli's throat tightened. He knelt in the snow, bringing himself to their eye level. I'm not going anywhere just yet. Your mama needs help, and I reckon I could use a purpose. How about we go to that service together? Clara watched him, hope warring with caution on her face. Mr. Tanner, Eli, you don't have to do this. Webb will cause trouble. Eli stood, brushing snow from his knees. Trouble finds everyone eventually, ma'am. Question is whether you face it alone or with someone beside you. He offered his hand. After a long moment, Clara took it. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was strong. Then let's give them something to talk about, she said quietly. Eli almost smiled. Almost. The church sat at the edge of town, white paint peeling slightly, steeple reaching toward the winter sky. Wagons and horses crowded the yard. Christmas service brought out everyone, farmers, merchants, families dressed in their Sunday best. Smoke rose from the chimney and through the windows. Candlelight flickered warmly. Eli drove the wagon with Clara beside him. The twins bundled in back beneath quilts. He felt their excitement like a physical warmth. We haven't gone in so long, Rosie whispered. Do you think people will be nice? Lily squeezed her hand. Mr. Eli will be there. Eli set his jaw. God help anyone who was unkind to these girls today. They arrived as the last families filed inside. Heads turned. Whispers began immediately, susurrant and sharp, like wind through winter branches. Clara lifted her chin higher. Eli helped her down from the wagon, then swung the twins down one by one. He offered Clara his arm. She took it. Together, they walked into the church. The whispers crescendoed. Families nudged each other. Children pointed. In the front pew, Harlan Webb sat with his wife, and when he saw them enter, fury flashed across his face before he smoothed it away. The minister, Reverend Collins. A gray-haired man with kind eyes paused his greeting to watch their entrance. Clara guided them to an empty pew in the middle. The girls sat between the adults, small faces determined. The service began, hymns were sung, scripture was read. Eli kept his attention forward, but he felt the stares like heat from too close fire. During a prayer, Webb stood. Reverend, if I might have a moment. Collins looked surprised, but nodded. Of course. Mr. Webb. Webb turned to face the congregation, his expression one of practiced concern. Friends, as a council member, I feel duty-bound to address matters of community welfare. We all know Mrs. Hollis has struggled since her husband's unfortunate passing, and now we see her. Eli stood. The movement was fluid, instinctive. His chair scraped against the wooden floor. Webb stopped, surprise flickering across his features. Eli stepped into the aisle. His voice, when it came, was steady as mountain stone. My name is Eli Tanner. I was passing through yesterday morning when two little girls asked me to stay for Christmas. Their mama fed a stranger on Christmas Day. He looked around the congregation, meeting eyes. That's Christian charity, plain and simple, exactly what the good book teaches. Silence fell like snow. This woman, Eli continued, has maintained her dignity despite losing her husband under unjust circumstances. She's raised her daughters with love and strength. She's asked nothing from this town except fairness. Webb's face reddened. Now see here. Anyone who thinks differently, Eli said firmly, can say it to my face, and we'll sort out who's really lacking virtue here. The congregation held its breath. Then, from the back pew, an elderly woman stood, Mrs. Patterson, silver-haired and bent with age, but her voice rang clear. I remember when Thomas Hollis rebuilt my porch after the storm. Wouldn't take payment. Said neighbors help neighbors. She looked around. Good people. The Hollises always were. Some of us forgot that. Another woman stood. Mrs. Crawford, who ran the mercantile with her husband. Clara Hollis's eggs were always the freshest. My customers asked after them when I stopped buying. A man stood, old Farmer Jenkins, respected for his honesty. That foreman should have answered for Thomas's death. We all know it. We just didn't want to say it. One by one, people stood. Not everyone, Webb's closest friends, remained seated, but enough. Enough to shift the balance. Webb's face had gone pale with fury, but he found himself outnumbered. Reverend Collins stepped forward, a gentle smile on his weathered face. On Christmas, we celebrate a child who changed the world. Perhaps we should listen when children speak. He looked at the twins, their faces bright with wonder. And perhaps we should remember that charity isn't just giving what's comfortable, it's giving what's right. He turned to Webb. I believe we should continue with the service. Mr. Webb, unless you have anything more to add. Webb sat heavily, defeated by quiet truth. A man's word, spoken true in front of God and neighbors, carries more weight than 100 whispered lies. The minister nodded to Eli. Mr. Tanner, thank you for your words. Will you join us for the rest of the service? Eli returned to his seat. As he sat, Clara's hand found his and squeezed once, tight with gratitude and something more. Rosie beamed at him. Lily leaned against his arm. The congregation began to sing again. And this time, the sound felt different, warmer, more complete. After the service, neighbors approached Clara. Apologies murmured. Invitations extended. Mrs. Patterson insisted they come for New Year's dinner. Mrs. Crawford mentioned she'd like to buy eggs again. Harlan Webb left quickly, his wife trailing behind. Clara received each overture with grace and dignity, her daughters standing proudly beside her. Victory tasted like peace, not vengeance. The ride home was quiet, but not empty. Winter light turned golden as afternoon deepened. Snow lay pristine across the landscape, sparkling where sun touched it. The horse moved steadily, pulling the wagon through tracks already made. The twins had fallen asleep against Eli's shoulders, their small bodies warm and trusting. Their weight felt like responsibility, like purpose, like home. Clara sat beside him, her face peaceful in a way he hadn't seen before. The tension she carried, that constant vigilance of a woman alone, had eased slightly. Thank you, she said quietly. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. She looked at him, really looked. Why? Eli considered the question as the wagon rolled forward. Why had he stood up? Why had he spoken? Why had he come back at all? Because some things matter more than being comfortable, he finally said, and some people are worth the trouble. Clara's smile broke like sunrise over snow. They reached the homestead as the light began to fade. Eli carried each sleeping girl inside, one over each shoulder. Their slight weights precious as gold. He laid them in their bed, and Rosie stirred. You came back, she murmured, only half awake. I did. Are you staying for a while? Promise. Eli brushed hair from her forehead with rough fingers made gentle. I'll be here when you wake up. That's a promise. Lily's eyes opened briefly. Good, she whispered. Then both girls drifted back into sleep, peaceful and secure. Clara stood in the doorway. Watching, Eli straightened, suddenly aware of the intimacy of the moment. A man in a woman's home, tucking her children into bed. It meant something more than he'd intended. Perhaps, or exactly what he'd intended but was afraid to admit. They moved to the fire. Clara poked the coals, adding kindling until flames leaped up again. There's room in the barn, she said carefully. If you wanted to winter here, just until spring, The girls would. She stopped herself. I would. Her eyes finished. Eli looked around the small cabin. The drawing on the mantel, 3 stick figures labeled family. Beside it, the carved wooden horses, Thomas's legacy to his daughters. Room for both the past honored and the future hoped for. Outside. His horse waited. The road waited. The empty wandering waited. But here warmth, purpose, 2 small girls who saw a stranger and saw salvation. A woman who expected nothing and deserved everything. Home isn't where you hang your hat. It's where your heart finally stops wandering. I reckon I could stay through winter, Eli said slowly. Help with spring planting, if you'll have me. Clara's smile held sunrise and hope and careful joy. The girls would like that. The girls would. Would they? His eyes said what his words didn't yet. And me, she added softly. I would too. Then I'll stay. Simple words, but weighted with meaning, heavy as the snow outside. That night, Eli slept in the barn he'd repaired, surrounded by the sounds of a homestead settling into peace. Hay rustled beneath him. The horse breathed steadily in the next stall. Through the door crack, the cabin's window glowed gold with firelight. Inside, a mother and her daughters slept safely, knowing someone chose to stay. Come spring, he'd mend more fences, fix whatever needed fixing, help with planting. Watch those girls grow stronger. But the most important fence, the one around his heart, 2 brave little girls had already mended. They'd stood in the Christmas snow, small hands gripping cold rails, and asked a stranger for love, and he'd given it, not because they needed him, but because he'd finally let himself need them. The fence gate stood open in moonlight, no longer a barrier but an invitation, no longer keeping someone out but welcoming someone in. Some men search their whole lives for home, riding through endless towns and empty miles, looking for something they lost. Some find it waiting at a fence line, wrapped in 2 small voices saying, please. Eli closed his eyes and slept truly, deeply slept for the first time in 4 years. Outside, snow fell softly, covering old tracks, making room for new ones.